TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
It's TellyCast's first birthday, and to celebrate, we welcome a real-life Spice Girl on the show and reveal the results of our very own survey with more great guests to discuss the results. Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to this week's TellyCast. Blowing out our first birthday candle this week are Spice Girl Mel B, Creative Director at Edinburgh TV Festival Stewart Clarke, Patricia Arescy, Commercial Director for TBI and Digital TV Europe at Informa, and Jonathan Broughton, MD at Workshare Consulting. It's all coming up. My first guests on this week's anniversary telecast are Patricia Arescy, Commercial Director for TBI and Digital TV Europe at Informa, Stewart Clarke, Creative Director at Edinburgh TV Festival, and Jonathan Broughton, MD at Workshare Consulting. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Lovely to be here.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. All of that stuff that's gone under the bridge a whole year. We've been round the sun. A lot of it we can put in the bin, can't we? But there's also, hopefully, a lot we can talk about that's relatively positive that will kind of help us in our onward journey. Patricia, starting with you. How are things with you? How are things at Digital TV Europe and TBI?
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me. Things are good. We have been very busy. We essentially, propose a lot of digital campaigns for the industry, our community. So it's been, it's been busy for us.
Good to hear it. You run, obviously, a publishing and events business. We won't go into all the challenges that everybody's had because everybody's been in the same boat over the last year. But how are things looking for you right now? Can you see sun on the horizon?
We can, but I think we're still going to have to wait a few more months. Informa, we're part of Informa, the two publications. And Informa is an events business. So we had to really change the ways of working quite a lot over the last few months, as you can imagine. But there's been lots of successes with pivoting to virtual, but there's obviously been a huge loss of revenues as well. So I think everyone is looking forward to the return of physical events. We can't wait.
Stewart, as I just mentioned, exactly 1 year ago, you were sat at the other end of the podcast mic. How's your year been at Edinburgh TV Festival, which is obviously a physical event, which you've turned virtual? And I know we talked about the challenges that you were facing back then. You fundamentally changed quite a few things, didn't you, in the last year on the festival? Yeah.
Hi, Justin. Good to be back. Thanks for having me. I'm a lot more beardy and I've got big hair since I was on last year, which it's a look I might grow to love. In terms of the festival, it was quite a journey. So obviously, I joined thinking we were planning sort of an Edinburgh in Edinburgh, and we had to change up everything very quickly, and it was seat of the pants. And I think without sort of being self-aggrandizing on behalf of the whole team here, I think we pulled it off. We did 50 hours of content, had some amazing speakers, David Oshoga doing fantastic, McTaggart, a real conversation starter, I think, and lots of good stuff. And I guess the challenge now is working out, if that was very much kind of adapting to the needs at the time. I kind of feel that already things have moved on in terms of what people expect, what you can do, etc. So it's kind of just feels like a whole new set of challenges, but lots of exciting stuff that you can do at the same time.
Another year wiser as well as older, Stewart?
Yeah, I think probably 2 years older, maybe more than a year older. No, definitely wiser. In all seriousness, the whole TV industry, what happened is perhaps kind of a real acceleration in many cases of change that was already underway, and I think that absolutely applies to us here at the festival in terms of kind of skilling up, getting stuff done in that sort of digital realm, whereas we never ever want to let go of the in real life piece. Yeah, it was a big learning curve for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've found over the last year as well. Lots of people have said that they've needed to acquire new skills, new ways of doing things, probably improving life as we go on and out of the pandemic. Jonathan, thanks to you also for coming back on the show. How are you doing?
Good. Always lovely to be here. Raring to go through our fantastic survey.
That's right. Now, we've been working together on the TellyCast Workshare Content Industry Monitor, which is a survey that many of our listeners will hopefully have taken. We had a fantastic feedback and some great response to a whole range of topics. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about how you've gone about building this survey and what sort of respondents did we have and what sort of results can we expect to see?
So I think first off, sort of what is it? And other than our brainchild, I think it's fair to say that it's been very specifically designed to be quite a broad survey. So trying not to repeat a lot of the very, very capable surveys that are already existent, and in fact dealing with sort of broad industry trends and helping people within the industry learn about and plan around what's going to be happening next. The method in terms of how we're gathering things, it's been fairly simple. It's been reaching out to various contacts, trying to make sure that at no point we're oversampling certain groups, and of course sort of modifying that as that comes through to the eventual data sets. One of the clever things that we've done, even if I say so myself, is treating this as very much a sort of relational data survey. So rather than just having a series of questions, one thing we've done is we've set up all of our answers in a nice visual engine, and everything's connected to each other. So we can subset from one question to another. Why am I talking about that? It means we can do things like say, people who are saying they're stressed around post-COVID working conditions. We can dig into that and try and explain a little bit around, is it because they're working longer? Is it because they've been given sort of extra work to do? Is it because their work-life balance has been disrupted? That kind of thing. So it's quite deep, it's quite wide, and I'd say it's quite powerful.
Our listeners can actually download this for free from the TellyCast website. We're just going to cover off some of the key areas in here because we could, as you can probably imagine, we could talk for a long time about this. But we decided to focus in on 4 sections of the survey. Some of the key trends, developments, and experiences, I suppose, that we've all been through over the past year. The first section is the immediate impact of COVID. Jonathan, take us through what you found.
I think you best summed this up in our little preamble when you said it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So, of course, there was some, a large amount of sort of negative answers to this question. But I think most crucially, we asked a few questions around support and response from leadership, and they were generally answered fairly positively. So most people found that they had enough support from their employers during the pandemic, which is really good. And where we looked into why they might not have felt there was enough support, most of that was not from actual action that was taken. It was identified as a lack of proactive action, which fairly understandable given what happened. Perhaps the lesson there is sort of communicating information as soon as you have it, proactively describing to your employees what's going to happen next, makes them feel very comfortable in terms of dealing with what was or what still is in many ways a pretty nasty situation. Without going too long into this, in terms of the impacts that was then felt in businesses, so not just in terms of support, but in terms of actual outcome, it was nice that only 4% have said that they are so negatively affected by this that they are having a bit of an existential crisis. So 4% is not great, but it's better than it could have been. And only 2% of businesses said they felt no impact at all. So the majority of people felt, sort of 30-40% have had something fairly negative, but are not facing an existential crisis.
Patricia, now it looks like the industry bosses have reacted pretty well overall to the worst of the crisis. Is that your sense of how things have developed over the last 12 months?
Yes. I mean, from a personal experience in terms of where I work, going back to what Jonathan just said, it was exactly that for us at Informa. We have a really strong leader, Stephen Carter, who is our group CEO, and that's exactly what he did. From the onset, telling us exactly, what the situation was, what measures were being put in place, what we may have to put in place next. So the communication straight from the very top to the employees was very crucial. It was all done through video calls, so very direct, and with Q&As at the end. So lots of opportunities for questions directly to the big boss. So I think that was very, very important for everyone at Informa at that point.
The swift application of the furlough scheme and the introduction on that. I mean, just imagine a year ago or so, we didn't know what the word furlough was. Well, I didn't anyway. Stewart, looking at recovery, nearly 80% of respondents said that they were either confident or extremely confident they would hold on to their jobs in the next 6 months. That's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, I think from where we were then to where we are now, I think that, this survey has just been done over the last few weeks. That's a pretty positive outlook in terms of people feeling an awful lot of job security.
Yeah, clearly that can only be a good thing. And I think it's really interesting looking at the survey that there are a lot of positive results. People feel, this is obviously a degree of confidence. I mean, a couple of things. I think that while that research suggests that people feel that their sort of bosses reacted well, again, that very, very good to hear. I think you have to accept that certain groups, as in freelancers, there are certain kind of groups within the industry, freelancers who effectively are, get TV made in many, many respects, who've just been pretty brutally hit. I think it's impacted more heavily on mums, on young people. While that is, it's really good to kind of to look at the positive stuff and take some of the positives. I think the impact has been felt most keenly among sort of certain specific groups.
Patricia, it also looks like a relatively balanced return to business and investment, and people are perhaps not really forecasting a roaring 20s, a huge deluge of work kicking in the last quarter of this year, but maybe something a little bit more balanced, but robust when it comes to recovery. Is that what you're getting? Because I know that you speak to other commercial representatives of lots of distribution businesses and networks. They are cautiously optimistic.
Yes, I would say so. I mean, being very, it's obviously very general, but we're in an industry which has been fairly protected from COVID. We're in the industry of television. There's obviously been other industries which have been very, very badly hit. So we are quite lucky. There's obviously been a lot of, people, unfortunately, who've suffered a lot. But that definitely contributes to, the industry we're in, to the positive flavor of your survey, I believe. And I picked up one bit of, in terms of the business side, which was interesting to me. It's nearly 20% say that revenue already exceeds pre-COVID levels, which I thought was interesting. So that's very positive. Clearly, obviously we know that the distribution side of the business has done very well. Production started a few months back now, right? So, yes, I think generally speaking, the industry is very positive. Obviously, there's now tons of opportunities with the SVODs for producers to pitch their shows and sell their shows for distributors. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised, generally speaking, that your survey brought out some fairly positive results. So it's really good to hear.
You're right about that 20% figure of respondents that are already feeling back to pre-pandemic levels, which is really promising, and perhaps an indicator of also all of these other businesses in the industry that have actually indirectly or directly benefited from the pandemic. Streamers, as we know, have had an amazing time. And as Stewart said earlier on, the acceleration of an adoption of those sort of services over the last 12 months has been remarkable. Coming on to the second section, that was all about working from home. Jonathan, what did you find here?
So working from home is a real mixed bag, I have to say. There were very clearly some people who actually, really enjoy the sort of the differences you get. I was going to say advantages, but of course that's not the case for everybody, so it's not quite true. At the same time as working from home, we do have the impact of COVID, which cannot be sort of, forgotten about as part of this. So a lot of the questions we're asking here sort of about, negative impacts in the last sort of 12 months are intrinsically linked to both COVID and sort of the slightly different lifestyle that people now have when they're working from home.
I think that really depends on what part of the industry you work in, right? So if you your job demands strong collaboration with colleagues and face to face, then of course it's difficult to do remotely. But I was quite surprised that there seems to be a lot of people who are very keen to go back to the office, essentially.
I think there's two words there that come to mind: homeschooling.
Yes. I'm lucky to pass that stage, but I have been feeling for parents over the pandemic for sure.
I think parents definitely, and also I also think that again there's a generational thing when particularly younger people who don't necessarily have home office, and Patricia, you're saying you might be sitting on your bed with your laptop or whatever, but it's kind of that's different to being in a shared house, for example. I just think that there's a difference across age groups. But I also think that TV, we're not working in factories making widgets. We don't sort of punch in and out, and people are used to working long hours when they need to, I think, and maybe there's something about sort of the culture there. Ultimately, it's a hugely collaborative people business. What we're doing is writing about TV, talking about TV, making TV, putting it out there. At every stage along the way, it should be fun, creative, interesting, engaging, but it's always a people business. So I'm not surprised that people kind of want to be sort of close to other people, but effectively.
The sense that we're getting is people are saying that either 60% or 40% of the time, so that blended kind of half 2-3 days a week would be ideal. Do you expect that to become the norm, Stewart, going forward?
I don't know, Justin, but I do know that, for example, when we're looking at what we do at the festival, we're definitely going to be looking at what, sort of the workplace culture, TV sort of, the sort of wider cultural piece means in terms of how people work and how that has been reshaped. I could probably tell you a bit more in August.
Jonathan, our third area we're looking at is working virtually. What did you find here?
Yeah, this was fascinating. One of the most striking things, I think, was what everybody agreed on, which is it's actually far easier to get meetings with people in a virtual environment. 83% of people said it is now easier to arrange video calls than it ever was to do face-to-face meetings. However, they also agreed that they preferred the face-to-face meetings and that the virtual meetings weren't quite as good. As I said, we can cross-compare a lot of this stuff with our other survey responses, and it was interesting that the people who were most keen at going to sort of physical events answered really strongly to these kinds of questions, whereas the people who were more happy sort of doing desk work, not going to events and things, didn't necessarily see a problem with the loss of face-to-face. In fact, very few of them identified that virtual meetings were worse in any way, and they certainly didn't think they were losing productivity as a result. So there was a real sort of polarization of people who love physical things and meeting people in person, and that's how they like business, and then a subset of people who actually are pretty okay with this stuff being virtual, and sort of felt that it was fine for this to get their sort of general day-to-day work done.
Jonathan, I think one of the things that your research has absolutely captured is the sort of challenge that anyone in sort of events faces which is you can kind of, what you can do is sort of satisfy the need for, intelligence and sort of learning, and you can give people kind of a lot of information, and they could sort of digitally see amazing speakers. It's that networking piece. It's that piece that I think that's the next challenge. And maybe last year people accepted that was hard to replicate. But as we move out of lockdown, even I think that's the thing, that people who are doing digital and virtual events need to really sort of crack that nut. And I'm not sure anyone's really done that as yet.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that the results chime exactly what you're saying. The virtual events were fine for keeping up with changes. They were very poor at networking, at catching up with key contacts, at seeing our friends, at gossip. And interestingly, when we looked at why people go to events, I'm sure you and Patricia know this better than me, but it's the networking, it's the selling, it's the keeping up with people that continually come as this is why I go to events in the first place. So it did point to sort of a polarization of functions. Sure, we can do stuff virtually, but there's definitely something in physical which is very, very hard to replicate.
Patricia, as Jonathan and Stewart said, we're covering off events in this section. And one thing that really jumped out to me was that people that are attending events, and correct me if I'm wrong in my interpretation here, Jonathan, but only 24% attend events to buy or sell. So that's nearly 3/4 of attendees to regular events are attending for networking, keeping up with trends, gossip.
This was a very specific question. We wanted to know the primary purpose. So what is the main reason they get there? So I'm sure they do everything else to a lesser extent, but that's what got them to the door.
You would hope so, yeah. You would hope they don't. They also want to do some business and not just sit on a croissette with a glass of rosé. Although I mean,
that's what I do.
I do love doing this myself, but yes, I mean, absolutely. I think the beauty of physical events is that more organic and often magical interaction that you can have with someone and end up doing business with them, and that other person becoming a friend even over time, because you've had a great time with them at an event, joking and laughing, or after hours. And I think for new business as well, that's probably very hard. Pitching new business maybe to a completely new customer. Again, it depends a little bit of on the industry. But for me, what's been, just to add to this portion of the discussion we're having here, what's been interesting for me and my dealings with clients, there's been two types. Although a lot of the clients I deal with are very. They're very strategic and, they're very sophisticated with their marketing. So a lot of them didn't have any problem pivoting to digital solutions. But it was trickier for a lot of marketers out there that I deal with to plan a digital event compared to a physical event. Often buying a stand, setting up a stand, certainly I'm not saying it's easy at all, but it's less complex in a way once you've got used to. I mean, it's all to do with the stand design maybe and all these aspects. But often a lot of marketers, if they're not that good, a lot of them are, of course, but they will get the stand ready for their teams and that will be it. With virtual events, you have to do a lot more planning ahead. You have to plan your appointments. You have to be very, very organized. So, some people I think have been caught by surprise in terms of not knowing exactly what to do with a virtual event, because they've been used to just buy their stand at various shows, a lot of shows that were probably quite useless to them, but they had, they were able to tick that box.
I think you're absolutely right, Patricia. It definitely is not easier just because it is virtual. It kind of, there's a whole new set of challenges. So in terms of kind of people coming back to in real life stuff, what I've seen, and this is just from spending all day every day talking to people, I guess, is that people sort of fall into different camps, but there's a large group of people who just cannot wait, and maybe it's because they're talking to me and I'm at the festival, but just can't wait to be back at those big in-person things. And then there feels like there's and this is purely unscientific, Jonathan, unlike your work, but it feels to me there's a kind of smaller group who are like, are you crazy? There's no way I'm doing that. And then there's a kind of a middle group of like, well, I need to know how you're making sure it's safe. But I'm pleasantly surprised by the number of people who are in that first group of like, when is it coming back? Jumping at the bit to be back with their colleagues, back in those real spaces, and that makes me optimistic about where we're headed.
Well, that's a social element, Stewart, isn't it? I mean, people really need to socialise again and do business, of course, but the social element of work is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about the physical events. As we know, all of these physical events have had to be virtual in some form or other, or fully virtual, actually, for the last year or so. Some, as we found through the survey, more successfully than others. But it's interesting to look ahead at which events our respondents were planning on attending in the next 12 months. And probably unsurprisingly, the event that people are most planning to attend is MIPCOM, with over 51. That's over half of respondents talked about MIPCOM. Interesting, MIP TV was second after that with 47%, and Real Screen, IBC, NatP, Edinburgh, should I say, was in third place, Stewart. There's a real thirst to come together and really sort of chew the cud about industry issues.
I'm glad we're on the podium, Justin.
Yes, yeah, you made the podium, exactly. That's very good.
The MIPs are really to be together as one, pushing us up to silver. But
yes,
never mind.
I was thinking about your event, Stewart, and given how things are going in the UK, I would say your event is probably one of the most likely to happen as early as possible compared to, there's probably a slightly less challenges than the bigger international event. I know obviously Edinburgh has also got quite a large international piece, but I think it's an event that stands its chances to be physical very, very soon. I hope so anyway.
Glad to have you behind us, Patricia. Thanks for that. But I think there's, I think compared to our sort of, compatriots who are running festivals in mainland Europe, and certainly it's definitely a different set of challenges. I mean, one thing I think that we haven't touched upon that's interesting is that when you run a digital event, what you do have that you don't necessarily get in real life is an unbelievable amount of data. There's no hiding in terms of exactly how many people engage with anything when people stop to. You can get as detailed, as granular as you like, and you're never going to sort of put stuff together by algorithm. I suppose otherwise I wouldn't have a job. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating, and some of it's kind of counterintuitive. And I can see how you could kind of get quite obsessive about it. In fact, I am.
That's going to be one of the key benefits: smarter event planning, smarter event programming. And when these events return, we were touched on that a little bit earlier in terms of safety. We found that 60% of respondents said that live events should feature testing as a requirement to gain access. Also, just nearly half respondents said that live events should be for vaccinated attendees only, which is obviously a bit of a controversial privacy issue out there and freedom issue. Any event that's going to open its doors must take those aspects pretty seriously, right, and have those in place, Stewart.
I'd also just to add to that, Stewart, for your event, the vaccination question was answered even more positively. So 64% of people who said they were going to go to Edinburgh said it should be a vaccinated conference only. There's a factoid for you.
One interesting side note is that the EICC, where our festival is primarily held, is currently a vaccination hub. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm alluding to there, but more seriously, there are so many different elements there to consider. I mean, that's really interesting, Jonathan, to get your data, to get your specifics on that. But it's a very complex question with lots of sort of different things to consider, which I know is a complete fudge, but it is also true.
when August comes, we'll have probably all the over 40s vaccinated. So all you need to do is forbid the event for under 40s, and we'll be sorted. So we can feel better about ourselves as well.
Great.
Yeah, that's sort of kind of what we don't want to do, to be honest, Patricia.
So, Jonathan, looking at the final topic of conversation from our survey here, we're looking at leadership and equality. What were the key takeaways from that?
Yeah, so I'll do general leadership first. This was interesting. We gave people the option of labeling their bosses as incompetent, and very few of them chose to do so. So just 2% identified bad bosses. Very normal distribution. 64% of people said that their bosses were pretty good. So 64% of people saying they were competent. Although this was a lot lower for production companies than the rest of the industry, so just 38%. So in general, people saying that in the production side of the business, bosses are both less competent and also, rather more positively, visionaries at the same time. So more polarized leadership within the sort of production subset. We asked a couple more questions. We asked about women in leadership and whether they had a level playing field, and we did the same for BAME. So the first question in that category, whether women made better bosses, most people said, it's the same, neither better nor worse. 21% said better, and no one dared to answer that women made worse leaders. So very happy to report that. In terms of the BAME messaging, we've been talking about this a lot in media in general over the last couple of years. There's an increased highlight of the fact that, especially on screen, there's still issues, and certainly behind the screen, it's no different. So 83% of people did say, look, there's a lack of BAME leadership, and that's a problem. And they also sort of 66% said that there definitely isn't a level playing field. So i.e. it's not just waiting for sort of past problems to catch up. There isn't a level playing field right now, which is interesting. So quite a strong reaction to that. And quite similar in the female question as well. So saying, is there a level playing field for women? Again, it's a 60-40 split, so a little bit better, but people saying that right now, 60% of people said there was an issue.
I think certainly when it comes to underrepresented minorities within the UK, I think we all know there's an issue, and it's a generational thing. Stewart, I know you're doing a lot with the Edinburgh TV Festival to help that when it comes to training and education, etc. Is that a surprise to you, these results?
I think it's very clear there's a lot of work to be done, and I think it's interesting to see. So at the festival last year, we particularly looked at the experience of Black executives, notably at leadership level, or the lack thereof, and we also kind of looked at diversity and inclusion more broadly as well. And I think even if you accept, and this is certainly could be debated, that there has been a degree of progress, what I see happening is that just changes the conversation, and suddenly you have to talk about people's experience on set when you do have more diverse and inclusive sets, for example. The conversation just is never going to go away. We're going to make sure of that. People here and beyond will hopefully as well. So it's just what the sort of most relevant question is, and it's how you kind of keep developing the conversation and asking the right questions. So hopefully everyone just can keep getting better.
How about you, Patricia? I mean, when it comes to being a woman in the TV industry and your experience of rising up through the ranks, have you found it a level playing field? And what else do you think can be done to really sort of level up the male and female split right now?
Yes, I think now we're actually having a lot of companies who are full of men. I deal with a lot of technology providers, and it is primarily male industry, who book online panel discussions with us and webinars and things like that, and who ask to have females on it. So now, there is real pressure, even with, we've had comments about some of our judging panels for our awards. We have awards. We've had comments coming from people, in industry saying this is not diverse enough, it's not good enough. And we've actually had one client quite recently, I won't name them, but it was essentially them not signing up to the deal if we could not bring them a female to the panel discussion. So that's how important it was to them. They didn't sign up because we couldn't bring the expert in that field who was a female. So I think we're at the stage now where it's going, and it needs to, just probably like the feminist movement and most movements, it needs to go almost the other way, if you see what I mean, where we may have situations where females may be put in situations where they might not necessarily be the best expert in the field, but, they will be given a chance to be on a panel discussion or something like that. And it's probably necessary because, after all, I'm going back to really that old, and, I've listened to this comment on your podcast before, Justin. Like females, a lot of the time, they don't always raise their hands as well to participate in things because maybe I think they're not always quite as confident as men. It's one issue. It's not probably the only issue, and there are some, other things that will change over time. I think I'm very confident that females will rise through the ranks, will get better at asking for things, asking for a pay rise and things like that. And I'm very confident that things will change, but it will take time. These things take time, and you need to push time sometimes. This is happening at the moment. But in the meantime, I think there are still very unfair situations when it comes to pay, when it comes to promotions and things like that. I think a lot of unfairness.
It's also about responsibility, isn't it? Because I think you can see, so a broadcaster or commissioner can say, you're not getting a commission unless this production is suitably sort of diverse and inclusive, which is great because, that production should be. And if that means you doing more work to make that the case, then that's how it works. But the broadcaster or the commissioner also has a responsibility. And, from where I sit, helping to organise a festival, there's a responsibility in terms of, who we put on our platform. And it's kind of, I think, everyone right through the sort of the chain has to accept that responsibility, I feel.
I think I'd love to jump in there because I've actually heard, some of my analyst friends echoing a lot of what you've been saying. And it's almost like there's almost like a slightly unfair pressure of kind of you guys, to be honest, on you to sort out panels that are diverse, and yet a lot of the people who are, from the almost from the, I don't want to get into its trouble, almost from the sponsor side, who are not providing diverse representation, and it's on you to find. I've definitely had some analyst friends say something along the lines of, I've been asked to do this and it's not my area. It seems they just want me because I am, X group. It gets people in the right places, and you can talk about prominence and how that has effect on sort of general development, and that's all positive. But at the same time, it can't be a nice feeling thinking that's the reason you've been invited, not for your expertise. But
being the token female,
Yeah, but I think that's a very interesting point because, I've seen this, firsthand. If, for example, you are doing something that specifically is talking about diversity, and you ask someone to be on there, you kind of quite rightly, people could push back and say, I'm a producer, or I'm a journalist. Don't kind of define me by that. Ask me to do stuff more broadly, and that's what absolutely, and I think that's exactly right to be saying that. And I think that, from where I sit, it's really important that everything we do feels like it looks, a little bit more like the world out there.
Well, I think it's everyone's responsibility, hasn't it? I think that's one of the things that's come through over the last year as well. I think that everybody now should be feeling more of a sense of responsibility to level up right across the industry, engender confidence in people that don't have as much confidence, whether that be women or any of these other groups that we're talking about that are underrepresented in the industry, to give them a chance, and hopefully we can start addressing some of these issues that the survey points out.
Justin, I do sense, I don't know how everyone else feels about this, but there has been, in such a through such a difficult time, there has been a kind of, and people are competing with one another. That's the sort of nature of what we do. But there has been a lot of sort of cross-industry, cross-sector sort of cooperation, and people have been pulling together in a lot of instances. And when something bad happens, you can see people react to it. And when there's a sort of perceived sort of unkindness, I think people are more willing to push back and sort of to call people out. I don't know, that might just be my perception.
Yeah. No, well, I hope so. There's a lot that we can go through here, but I think generally, there's a hashtag be kind that people are, really asking each other to just have a little bit more thought about helping people out, colleagues. And as you said, there's been a lot of collaboration over the industry over the past year. And that's something that I really hope will carry on in the months ahead.
There has been, within, or whether it's certain, shows or specifics, there has been, in some instances, a mindset of, do whatever you need to do to get this done, to get this thing made. I don't care if it means you working, 25 hours a day, just get it done. All we care about is getting something made, getting, good numbers for it, whatever. And actually, I think there's a realization that isn't really, you actually have to think about the process along the way, and actually that just being everyone sort of being essentially a bit kinder to one another, or allowing people a bit of headspace if they need it, while also accepting that it is brutally competitive and everyone wants to be brilliant. They're not, I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Guys, we could talk for a long time about the results from this survey. There's lots more to delve into as well. It's available to download under the survey section on telecast-podcast.com. So please go there and download to your heart's content. Thank you for chatting through that with me. And now it's time in the show for Patricia and Stewart to pick the very first story of the year, as opposed to the week, to celebrate our first birthday. That's the TV industry news item that's caught their eye over the past 365 days, I think it is. Stewart, what's your story of the year?
My story of the year, and I'm afraid probably my hero, and get in the bin all at once, sorry if I'm messing around with the format here, is clearly the advent of a European Super League in terms of football. I can't remember a story. I mean, there's such a lot of ramifications for TV in terms of rights, in terms of going direct to consumer, in terms of streaming, lots and lots of different angles there. But I just can't remember a story that has actually united, all of the football tribes in terms of their opposition. I mean, I think, Justin, it's a rare case of maybe a Chelsea and a Leeds fan being able to actually agree on something for once. Yeah,
well, it's captured on a podcast as well, which is extraordinary. What's interesting from a TV perspective, as you say, is that, Sky have come out very forcefully yesterday, say that they haven't been in discussions for this new European Super League. I think Amazon came out today, and obviously we're recording a couple of days before the show goes out, have also started to distance themselves from it. Patricia, how about you? What's your story of the year?
So I'm going to be very predictable with all of mine, Justine. I'm sorry, but the death of the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, is my story of the year. I know it's very recent, but I've got very short-term memory anyway, so that's one reason. And also because, obviously from the monarchy point of view, but in terms of complaints that the BBC received, was interesting, 110,000, I believe, which is the highest number ever. And I do love a bit of pageantry, no less than anyone else. But it was a bit crazy, wasn't it? The day of his death was announced that BBC One and BBC Two just completely switched their whole programming for several hours. And both channels, to me, was just very hard to understand, BBC One and BBC Two, and I think that was a big mistake. And on top of that, from just the corporation's point of view, it just really felt like like scavenging. Sort of like they were already with obviously all of that, which I don't blame them to be ready. I'm sure they have everything ready for our Queen, but it just didn't sit right at all with me from the point of view as well that they did that.
It felt like a bit of royal protocol that had been drafted about 20 or 30 years ago, and obviously nobody at the BBC is going to say, can we take another look at this?
Exactly, Justin. That's how it felt to me. It just, it was wrong on several levels. That was just, I think, a wrong decision from the BBC to do this.
It feels to me that maybe the BBC kind of defaults to a sort of, BBC of old in that sort of situation, the nation's sort of broadcaster, and I don't know, it was fascinating to kind of watch how they dealt with it, with that kind of coverage, and then see the number of people who objected to that. I wonder to what extent they were expecting that kind of pushback, and it's quite immediate now, isn't it? You can kind of see that reaction on social and such like. It was just fascinating to watch that play out.
People don't like to be kept from their bake-off, do they? That's the other thing. But the actual viewing figures for the funeral were very impressive, weren't they? I think there was about 13, 14 million, which was proof that, the nation, and I don't know about the international figures, but I could certainly see a lot of interest from the States, as you might imagine, when it comes to different networks covering it as well. And now it's time in the show where my guests get to nominate their hero of the year and who or what they're telling to get in the bin. Stewart, who's your hero of the year?
I'm sorry, I think I may have done that already, and it's one of the Nevilles. But I think in industry wise, I think what John McVeigh and the group he was working with did in terms of getting government support for the industry during, in the real heat of the crisis was phenomenal, had a real tangible effect. And, you just have to just take your hat off to that effort.
Absolutely. And how about you, Patricia?
I've got Kate Bingham for the vaccination rollout program, Justin. There's not much more to say about that. I think, it probably required a lot more work and organisation than it looks like, especially when you compare with the rest of Europe in particular. So, yes, that's been very positive. I think it's really cheered people up. So I think that's had a real big impact on everyone. And, realistically, on our day-to-day life now, we're starting to open up. So, yes, all good.
And who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
Another COVID-related, I'm putting my president in the bin, Emmanuel Macron, being French. And I'm extremely disappointed how he has behaved, especially the last few weeks, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought he was actually a real leader in Europe. He's the one who came up with the phrase, we're at war with the virus, which was used over here as well, and taking very quick measures, with the lockdown. But the last few months, I think I don't understand what he's doing. I mean, he's done very, very very soft lockdowns, which haven't worked. France now is in a very bad place with 40,000 cases every day. Everyone's able to meet indoors, mixing households, everything you want to do pretty much in France you can do, except that there's a curfew, which I think just doesn't work if you can do pretty much everything you want to do in a day. Another big thing that I'm angry about is what he said about the Oxford AstraZeneca when he said it was quasi ineffective for the over 65, which wasn't true. Which already, there are very high levels of hesitancy in France with a vaccine for some reason, which I don't really understand there again. So it's damaged the trust in France and in Europe. I mean, Macron's got a lot of influence, right, in Europe. He really has made a lot of mistakes, I think. But, the elections are next year. So surprise, surprise. And I think he has behaved a little bit, I'm afraid to say, and I've heard a British journalist call him the educated Trump, and he has been behaving a little bit like Trump lately, fancying himself as an epidemiologist and as the expert, and doing his own what he thinks is the right thing to do, which is completely ridiculous. So Macron, Emmanuel, you're going in the bin. Sorry.
And how about you, Stuart? Who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
I've got a good French baddie. It's Charles Sobrage, aka the Serpent, in the Netflix and BBC co-pro. I think he was the best villain on TV. Best, obviously, by that I mean the worst villain on TV for ages. And I thought that show was brilliant because it was a strange mix of being able to kind of enjoy these amazing, watching these amazing bits of Thailand and Asia, while then sort of feeling a bit guilty because at the same time there were some just genuinely horrific and chilling things going on. But that's a brilliant bit of TV. But I don't think you could argue with putting him in the bin based on the evidence of that series.
Oh, absolutely. There's a French villain and the French Prime Minister both doing
no, French
president, should I say, going down the bin. Thank you. Right. Okay. So thank you very much indeed to Patricia, Stewart and Jonathan. Thanks so much for joining me on the first birthday of TellyCast. Really appreciate you spending all your time with us today. Good luck. We'll see you in Edinburgh, Stuart. We'll see you, Patricia, very soon in Soho, hopefully. And same with you, Jonathan.
See you soon, Justin. I can't wait.
Bye. See ya.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
So my next guest on this week's show really doesn't need any introduction. Welcome to the show, Mel B. How you doing, Mel?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really good and really excited to have a real life Spice Girl on TellyCast. Thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you doing? You've moved back to Leeds fairly recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I did. It was all kind of a bit last minute. I came back over to England for Spice Girls tour rehearsals, and my kids were just like, Mummy, why don't we stay here? Because my mum is one of 7, so I've got lots of aunties and uncles and cousins and nephews. And my kids were just pressuring me. They're like, we don't want to go back to America. We want to stay here. Then my 13-year-old found a school in Leeds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're serious. So we've just ended up staying here. The kids love it. We're like in the countryside, there's sheep in our backyard. It's very peaceful and surrounded by family, which is the most important thing.
Well, it's great to not only have you on the show, but also a fellow native of Yorkshire. Have you found Leeds? Yeah, have you found Leeds has changed much since you left Leeds originally?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's definitely cleaned up its act. There's lots of loads of brand new restaurants. It's kind of gone a little bit more cosmopolitan. We've got a great university here, so it's full of aspiring artists and actresses and, people that want to get into the doctor field. So it's kind of, it's bumped its quality of life up a little more here.
And obviously Channel 4 has opened up fairly recently as well. So,
so there's lots of opportunities here now, more so than there was before.
Absolutely. Well, we'll come on to talk a little bit about that later on. So putting aside the fact that you're a member of the best-selling female group of all time with over 90 million records sold worldwide as part of the Spice Girls, and obviously you've had a number of solo hits as well. But TellyCast is about TV and the business of TV, and you're also one of the best-loved TV personalities and most in-demand talent show judges now.
My ego is going out of crazy right now. My ego's going crazy right now. So many compliments in one go.
Well,
Can't cope.
It is quite amazing. Let me read this list of shows that you've hosted and been involved in recent years. So Dancing with the Stars, The Voice Kids, The X Factor, America's Got Talent, Lip Sync Battle, The Masked Singer, and then Loose Women, Dance Your Ass Off, It's a Scary World. You've worked in video games as well. It really is a remarkable list, Mel. What do you most enjoy about working in TV?
I just like the spontaneity of it all, especially when you film live shows. And, a lot of these shows have a set format, But I'm just kind of allowed to do what I want. Obviously, I have to stick to the rules to a certain extent, but I just get to be me on TV and have fun and mentor people and give my opinion for what it's worth. And yeah, you get to glam up, you get to put a nice little frock on, get your hair and makeup done. It's kind of glamorous, but also hard working, because sometimes you're on set for like 10 hours at a time. But, you know, I find it very entertaining and very unpredictable. Yeah, it fulfills my every need, really.
Can you remember your first ever TV appearance, right back, maybe it was Spice Girls or maybe even pre-Spice Girls? Can you remember when you were first on TV?
I think one of the first couple of TVs we did was Top of the Pops. And I think we did a Cilla Black segment and something with Andy Peters, like way back in the early days. I'm talking like 25 years plus ago. Yeah, and back then it was just us five running amok all over town, all over the world. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, as well as lots of memorable moments on those shows that I've just listed, and obviously Spice Girls TV appearances, another memorable TV moment that you've had was Running Wild with Bear Grylls, when you peed on his hand to treat a jellyfish sting. And I was watching that the other day, and it's been viewed more than 16 million times on Discovery UK's YouTube channel now. Does that stick out for you as the most memorable moment for you?
It was definitely one of them. And to think that 16 million people have watched it, damn, I should have got a cut on the back end of that show.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a really fun show because you don't quite know what you're getting into. You just know that it's going to be a massive adventure and just stretch you beyond belief with all your fears involved. I mean, I was scared of heights and spiders, and I had to abseil down I think it was like a 60-foot something or other, like cliff. I had to live in like a little like shrubbery thing with spiders everywhere. Well, not live, stay overnight. So it was definitely, it definitely pushed me to my max. But it was really kind of almost like a bit of a soul-searching thing, because you get put into situations that you would never normally be put in, but yet you've agreed to do it, so you just have to go with it.
But I guess it's not just a TV show, it's actually a life experience, isn't it? That sort of show.
Oh, definitely. I remember one time we were like hacking our way through a bunch of shrubbery in this massive field. And I said to Bear, who's that guy on the other side of the camera? He said, oh, he's SAS, and he's also trained in if you get like a snake bite. So they had like paramedics on standby too. So you're really putting yourself into quite obscure, dangerous kind of territory. But obviously you have the safety net of knowing that people are going to be there to look after you if need be. But I just wasn't aware until I actually asked that question, like, what are these people doing here? And it was like, oh, it's just for your safety in case anything goes wrong. Because if you get a snake bite, we have to airlift you out of here. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is what I've signed up for.
And you were like, oh, there's snakes?
Yeah, literally.
It was recently announced that you're going to host the second series of The Fashion Hero. And the first season aired in over 160 territories worldwide. You know, just a little bit of background on The Fashion Hero was a TV series that's created to challenge the fashion industry's preconceived standards of beauty. And from hundreds of thousands of registered applicants, gets whittled down to finalists for the show of different ethnicities, genders, shapes and sizes, and they all compete for the chance to become the fashion hero. What attracted you to the show, Matt?
Well, for me, the way it was presented to me was just so appealing, because it's not just hosting the show. It gets whittled down to about 30, 32, 33 contestants from all over the world. And you get to be with them on this amazing journey of all these different challenges. And you really get to kind of be involved with the contestants rather than just judging them. It's nothing like that at all. I'm their support girl. Apart from that, another thing was, for me, it's all inclusivity. So it doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, what colour you are, what shape you are, what disability you have. You have a chance to shine and blossom and grow along with each episode and each challenge. And I get to be right there with them, helping them and supporting them. So that to me was a massive, big, like, yes, I definitely want to be involved kind of flag, because there's not many shows like that. They all kind of stick to a certain look or a certain vibe or like must-haves, which in the real world, we're all completely different. Nobody has that perfect body. Nobody has that perfect brain or perfect mentality about themselves and other people. So it's really about learning and growing together as one kind of happy family.
And it's really important, isn't it, now? Because we've all grown up with these airbrushed images and these fashion magazines, both men and women, but predominantly women have had to really be faced with really sort of high standards, unattainable standards.
Yeah, and it's completely unrealistic also. I'm raising 3 girls. I've got a 9-year-old, a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old that are all girls that I've raised single-handedly by myself. And it's been really important for me as a mum to ensure their own inner confidence, to embrace their differences and to be comfortable in their own skin. And that's what this show is all about.
Now, when you started off in the entertainment industry yourself as a talented black girl from Leeds, did you find it tough to get breakthroughs in the beginning, especially not living in London?
I mean, I think there's challenges everywhere, but I think there's a particular challenge, especially if you're a woman, and I'm mixed race. So my dad's black and my mum's white. So I've got the whole different racial sides going on. But I never let that kind of deter me from wanting to be in the entertainment industry. And I had a very supportive mum, very supportive dad that just had me look at myself and just embrace it and work on myself, whether it be me not conforming to having my hair braided or straightened. I wanted to wear my natural hair out curly, with making sure that if I had an opinion, I was tactile and that I would speak my own voice and make myself be heard. So I got brought up with, a lot of challenging rules, but also a very supportive family. So I got to be me and find out who I was. I mean, obviously along the way I made mistakes and this, that and the other, but I was always kind of comforted with the fact that, my parents were very much encouraging for me just to be me. As long as I'm being authentic and true to myself and I have good morals, then, I was happy all the way.
The Spice Girls message of female empowerment, I think is probably needed as much now as it was 25 years ago when Wannabe was a hit. What advice do you have for young women setting out on a career in TV and entertainment right now?
Oh God, that's such a broad question, because I always say I never like to give advice to strangers. I give advice to my kids and to myself, but everybody else, I don't know, it's each to their own. But in any profession that you want to enter, it takes hard work and it takes persistence and dedication, and you've got to work on your craft. But especially these days where it's very easy to get Instagram famous, or, it's just a little bit more accessible. And if you don't have the talent or the know-how to be able to back that up, you're going to be very disappointed in life. So just in general, I would make sure that you learn your craft and that you're confident in what you do, and you should be forever opening to be able to learn new, different, exciting things along the way with whatever path you choose.
And just going back to the fashion hero a second, and this is all very much in the same vein. Obviously, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all these new social media channels have only relatively recently come to the fore, and young kids, my kids are all obviously glued to their screens on these channels as well. I think that something about the fashion hero really addresses that, doesn't it? It's about being empowered to be yourself, as opposed to trying to live up to the stereotypes of this unattainable facade. It's about being true to yourself.
Yeah, I think it's come to a point now where people want more real. They want achievable. They want to look at an achievable look that isn't an unrealistic standard, and I think the beauty industry has been kind of really badly represented, because it has been so airbrushed and it has been so perfectly fake. Now people want more, and they realise that that's just not normal. If you just look around you, you've got all different shapes, sizes, people with disabilities, whether it be mentally or physically, and people want to connect more with that real side of of people rather than just something that is just like a bit of a Barbie doll fakeness.
Do you get the impression that the next generation coming up now, they're going to be a bit kinder than, the experience that we had when we were growing up at teenage years?
I would hope so. Now, you have to be politically correct. What people would say to you in a job interview or even like a dance audition back in the day 25 years ago would be really harsh, and it wouldn't pass these days. You have to be more careful with your words. You've got the Me Too movement, you've got the Black Lives Matter, all these things are coming to fruition. So people have to be more careful, which hopefully will be embracing a kind of world where we're more aware of other people and their differences.
Absolutely. This year, it's the 25th anniversary of the Spice Girls. I mentioned Wannabe being in the charts, and your tour plans have presumably been put on ice. Are there any Spice Girl TV projects in the pipeline you can talk about?
Yeah, this year's our 25th anniversary, so there's been lots of discussions between us girls about how we want to celebrate it and how we want to embrace the fans and what they would like to see or hear. So we've definitely got a few things in the pipeline, but obviously with COVID, a lot of things got put on the back burner, or should I say got put on hold. So now, the UK's opened up a little bit more. We're constantly in discussions with each other. We have like a funny WhatsApp group that we're always messaging ideas and things like that. So yeah, there's things in the pipeline, but I don't want to be the one to let the cat out of the bag just yet.
Right. Okay. Speaking personally about TV, what are you watching right now? Are you sort of a Netflix junkie when you're at home? Are you just streaming, 24 hours a day, or what do you enjoy watching on TV yourself?
I watch a variety of things. The last really good TV show I watched was Your Honour, which just had me enthralled. And then I watch silly things like Say Yes to the Dress, which is like my guilty pleasure. Or I watch Intervention. So it's like real life people with real life situations and they end up getting help. Some do, some don't, some fall by the wayside. But I like watching things that are actually real, like, I don't know, One Born Every Minute or Inside the Ambulance. I'm not really much of a Netflix junkie per se. I just like to just catch things on a whim. I hate it when you have to wait another week for the show, or you can binge watch like 8 episodes, because I would stay up all night. So I've kind of deterred myself away from that.
That's probably a good move. You're right. There's some shows, the way that they change their rights or they negotiate their rights. Yeah, it's back to the old school, like Line of Duty right now. You can only watch it once a week.
Oh,
if you're keeping up to it. It's probably
everyone's going nuts over that show.
Yeah. Have you watched it? I haven't watched it myself, actually. I'm kind of like,
I haven't.
No.
I haven't yet. I'm a bit of a late starter. I only I think it was like 2 years ago, started watching Breaking Bad. I don't really go with the fads. I think, oh God, well, what's all that about? And that's all everybody talks about. So I kind of avoid that.
Right. So you're on a bit of a Bryan Cranston kind of trip at the moment with Your Honour as well, right?
Yeah, he's great. Oh my gosh, that show's so good. So good.
Mel, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with me today. Really appreciate it. The Fashion Hero starts filming this summer, presumably once COVID restrictions allow, in South Africa's Sun City Resort. That's going to be amazing.
I know, yeah, I cannot wait. I've actually been to this place before, like 20 years ago, when we got invited to go and have dinner at Nelson Mandela's house. And that's actually where we stayed. So it'd be nice to go back there and reminisce a little bit and work.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Mel, I could talk, for hours. There's so many things that I'd love to talk about, but thanks for being so generous with your time. Best of luck with everything.
Welcome.
Best of luck with the Fashion Hero.
Thank you.
Well, we've reached the end of another week's show and the end of our first year. Thanks for listening and thanks for sticking with us. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show and share it with friends and colleagues. And a quick reminder to sign up for our free newsletter called TellyCast Plus. It's packed with all the interesting TV industry stories of the week you may have missed, exclusive insight and opinion, including the secret producer, our intrepid, anonymous exec reporting from the front line of TV production. It's completely free. Just visit our website to sign up at telecast-podcast.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Until next Thursday, as always, stay safe.